Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Chandler, and I am a member of the training and support team here at Hawks Learning. Thank you all so much for joining me today for this webinar on how to preserve records and reset your gradebook. If you have any questions as we are walking through this, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and I will address those at the end. But with that being said, we can go ahead and get started. So when it comes to getting ready for the end of the term and making sure you have everything wrapped up, you might be in a situation where you need to adjust any of your students' due dates for assignments such as lessons or web tests. So I will go ahead and first walk you through those steps. First, we'll look at how to change those specific due dates for just one student in particular. First, let's go ahead and look at the reports tab and all student scores to accomplish this. So when looking to change maybe just a specific lesson due date for a student, I can go to this report, select your section. You can select the student or just leave it blank. And then once I select display scores, I'll see that list of all of my students in my section. And then I can expand out these different assignment groups. So once I expand out lessons, you'll see there's an icon listed below each of these lessons for the student. And what you can do is select the icon for the lesson that you might want to change the due date for. And you'll see here, you now have that option to edit due date. This is the way that you can edit a specific student's due date without affecting the section and all the students as a whole. So you would simply enter in your new date and select save to save your changes. And then while you're here, if you do need to change the due date for any sort of web test as well, then what you can do is expand out whatever category you might have that web test located in. And then as we did here with the lessons, you'll select the entry for that web test, and then you can select update student settings. Once this opens up, it's going to take you over to our web test underneath our student settings by student category. And then for that specific student, you'll see a list of all of their web tests that they currently have assigned. And you'll be able to take those general settings that you might have entered for the section as a whole and make updates based on that specific student. So once you go ahead and make those changes and save them, this will only affect that one student. So then one thing I do want to note, if we go back here to the reports page, is that you can make these same sort of changes and updates to students' due dates, not only in the all student scores report, but under the detailed student grades report as well. So now, if you need to maybe make changes for your section as a whole, you may already know how to do this, but I'll also just reference it as well. If you go to the assignments tab and then lesson due dates, this is how we can update the lesson due date for your whole section. Simply by selecting your section here, you'll open up that due date template and you can change any of those lesson due dates or add things as you need. And then of course, always save changes. And then for when it comes to web test, if we go to the assignments tab and then go to web test, we can make those updates as well. So here we'll have our web tests listed. I can select the checkbox next to it to highlight and select the exam. And then on the right-hand side, we'll go back over to our general settings. And here you'll see that list of your sections that have the web test assigned, where you can simply move and change any of those dates and times or any of these other general settings and save changes. So another thing that we'll go ahead and look at is looking at accessing and exporting students' records. So if you want a record of your students' grades and information, or if you do not have LMS integration set up and therefore need to export those students' grades at the end of the term, then what you can do is use our reports and then go down to export grades. So looking at our export grades report, what you'll notice if you've used this before is that it does look a little bit different. We've given this an upgrade, so hopefully it'll be easier and you'll be finding a lot of great information that you can export from here. So you'll just use our filters here to select your section. You can do multiple at a time. But once you have your section, you can select a specific student or leave it at all of them. And then you'll see here you have these different settings for what you might want to export. You can select specific student details. And then again, at the bottom, you can choose how you want this format to export to, if you want an Excel sheet or any of these other options here. And then once you hit submit, it will automatically start downloading to whatever sort of format that you chose. So here I would download an Excel file. So that is a way that you can use the export grades report to get that copy of your students' grades. And then another thing that we'll take a look at now is preserving your students' records. So once your section and all of your students have finished up, we do recommend taking an archive of your gradebook. So you'll find this under the Tools tab and then Archive Gradebooks. This will essentially take a screenshot of your students' grades and information, and it's going to store it for you within Hawks. So that way you can come back and access it or export it later if you need it. So if I go to the Tools tab and then Archive Gradebooks, what you can do here is enter in an archive description. And this is something that we normally see instructors use something along the lines of what the term is that they are archiving. So that way they know next time that they come back, they can reference that description. So once I enter in my description and select Archive Gradebook, this usually does take a second as it is grabbing all of that information from your students and their grades. So just let that run as it archives and takes that screenshot of everything. And then once it is complete, I'll show you where you can access that archive, and that way you can reference it later. You can come back here and pull from it if you need to. So we'll just let that run. And it does take a little bit longer depending on if you do have a lot of students that were in your grade book or in your section, a lot of assignments. So if this doesn't finish up here soon, we might just skip over that archive and then just show you where you can access them. So we might have a lot of information in here. So I'll go ahead and just leave that archive. Normally you do want to let it sit and run all the way through. But for the purposes of today, I'll jump back over to Tools. And then once you do want to access your archive, you would simply just click on View Archived Gradebooks, and that would show you that list of any of those archives that you've done in the past. So now that we've looked at preserving student records, let's look at what you do once the term is over and you want to get set up for a new term. So looking at the Tools tab and then Manage Sections, we do have a few features that will be helpful to you. One of them is our section copy tool. So if you're creating a new section and you're going to add a new section here, as you're filling out all this information over here on the left, you might want to simply copy all of your settings and assignments and templates from a past section and apply it to this new section, so that way you can just easily get set up without having to recreate things. And you can do that all by using what we have over here on the right-hand side. And that is by selecting the section that you want to take all these past templates and assignments from. And once you select that section, it will pop up with a couple of different questions that it wants to ask you. The first is if you want to copy basic settings. So basic settings meaning the same section, meeting times, start and end dates, etc. So if this is a section that is happening, in the fall versus one that you're copying from in the spring, you would want to go ahead and hit no here. Because you wouldn't want to copy over the same start and end dates, as you'll be putting in new start and end dates given that this is a different term. Versus if this was potentially you have multiple sections in the same term, you could just create one section and then copy everything, including the same start and end dates. But here I'll hit no. And then as you'll see, all of those templates that I might have had assigned to that section are populating here, letting me know that those are assigned. And then I could simply save changes and see that all of those have been applied to this new section. So then once this is done, one thing I do want to note is that if this is something that you're doing for a section that is starting in a new term, so you're going from maybe the spring to the fall term, then you will just want to make sure that you go in and update your lesson due date templates potentially, so that way you can just push back any of those old dates to fit in line with this new term. And then of course, any of those web tests that were assigned to this section that you copied from will be assigned to your new section. So again, with those web tests, you will want to go in and change those dates as well if you do have old due dates from a past term. And then additionally, another thing I want to show here, if we go back to tools and then manage sections, is that when you are closing out a term, we have a newer feature that allows you to kind of clear up a few things and hide old sections from your gradebook. So that way they no longer appear anywhere in the gradebook except for on this page under tools, manage sections, and then under tools and manage students. So back to tools and manage sections, you'll see what I'm referring to here is this visible in gradebook column. So I have a few of these marked as yes, one marked as no. If you do want to hide any of these, you can simply select the checkbox next to the section and then up at the top, select hide sections. So it'll give you that option to either just hide it from students. So that way students couldn't enroll in the section is what that means. They wouldn't be able to see it as something when they are getting set up or enrolling their code. But then on the other hand, we have the hide from gradebook, which also does hide it from the student as well. So if I select hide from gradebook, this will change to no. And then if I go anywhere else in the gradebook, just to show you, I only can see my one section listed because my other two were selected as hidden. But then at any point, you can always come back here and show your section. It's not gone forever. You would just select the checkbox and then select show sections, and that would change it. So that is, pretty much everything that I wanted to cover with you all today. I hope this information was helpful, and I have reserved a little bit of time to address any questions that you may have. So if you do have any questions, feel free to enter those into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and I'll go ahead and address those now. So we do have one question in here so far. So from Stephen, it asks, can the administrator see the archived gradebooks of an instructor? And that's a really good question. I honestly haven't really come across this before. In my mind, I don't believe that an administrator can see the archived gradebooks of another instructor, but I'm not positive on that. So what I'll do is I will follow up on that and make a note of it so that way I can double check. But that is a really good question. So I'll make sure to double check on that and then get back with you, Stephen, so that way you know the answer to that. But any other questions at the moment about, archiving, getting set up and closing out the term and preparing for a new semester? Okay, well, it looks like there are no more questions and we are just about out of time. So thank you all so much for joining me today. If you do have any other questions, you can always reach out to your training and support specialist, or you can contact us via phone or live chat. And we'll be hosting more of these sessions with this webinar series. So those will be happening this week. Be sure to follow up with everyone with the links to the recordings once those are available. And thank you, everyone. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.